I will tell you a quick backstory where this creepy person who's been bothering me for about 4 years. They haven't directly threatened or scared me in person, so I just ignored them. Over time, I got used to it and wasn't really scared anymore because they didn't come close to me. They mostly sent strange letters and gifts, like pictures of my home and things they found in my trash. I called the police many times, but they couldn't catch or figure out who he was. I don't use a lot of social media, just Reddit, and I didn't think he would ever find out. Someone even asked if he knew I was talking about him on Reddit, and I said, maybe, who knows? I don't care. Well, it turns out he did see it, and he was not happy. He used to not be aggressive, but things started to change. The week after that was really calm. I didn't get any letters or messages from him, but suddenly, he surprised me by leaving letters with questions and my answers from a Reddit post I made. Along with that, he wrote a long, mean letter about my boyfriend. He never liked my boyfriend and suggested I should give him more attention. I don't know what he meant by spotlight. A few days later, he gave me a strange gift. Instead of putting it in the mailbox or on my car, he left it right outside my apartment door. I didn't bring the big box inside my house. Instead, I opened it outside. That was a bit strange because it was already a big box. When I opened it, I realized it wasn't a smart decision, but luckily, it wasn't something dangerous like a bomb. Still, it gave me the creeps. The box had things like zip ties, painter's tape, a TV remote with missing buttons, a strange pack of Band-Aids, and a framed picture of me. The glass on the frame was broken, and there were glass pieces everywhere. I called the police right away, and they took the box and its contents as evidence. After that, he was gone for about a week and a half. I thought maybe he got tired of hanging out or something. But 8 days ago, he started sending me mean messages. He complained that he was wasting his time on me and that I didn't appreciate his effort. He also said he was wrong about me being special. 5 days ago, I stepped on my doormat and heard a crunch. There was broken glass underneath. Later, I found my car all messed up. Someone scratched signs on it, smashed the lights, and even wrote a scary phrase on the windshield. I was really fed up with all this crazy stuff happening. I called the police again, and this time they listened to me a lot more. They discovered the same message under my doormat. I was angry, and they finally got it. Luckily, I had a camera in my car that recorded everything. Even though the video quality wasn't perfect, the police accepted it as proof. They promised to investigate further and said they would increase patrols in the area. For 2 days, everything was calm. But 2 days ago, at 4 in the morning, the doorbell rang. My boyfriend and I were confused, wondering what was happening. We looked outside and saw blue lights. The police were shouting at us to open the door. Our neighbor downstairs had called them because he heard someone coming in after him. He noticed a middle-aged man going up the stairs, triggered by the motion-activated lights. The neighbor waited. The lights turned on again, and he saw the man going upstairs, so he called the cop. They caught the person who was stalking me. He was on the floor just above mine, and he had a pocket knife with him. He admitted to it immediately. After 4 years of dealing with this, and thanks to a Reddit post and a vigilant neighbor, they arrested him. He's now in trouble with the law, and I have all the proof from the last 4 years. I'm not sure what will happen next, but for now, I can finally relax a bit. Then something crazy happened. So when the police checked the stalker's home, they discovered a bunch of letters, gifts, and pictures. And get this, it wasn't just stuff from me, but from other people too. Turns out, this guy was a serial stalker, doing this to lots of people for years, moving from one victim to the next. I couldn't believe it. I thought I was the only one dealing with this weird person, but it turns out he was running a whole operation. The police said he used different disguises and fake names. He went to great lengths to figure out his victims' daily routines. The strangest part? He had a whole wall covered in newspaper clippings and pictures of the people he targeted, like some creepy detective tracking his prey. The person following me wasn't just some overly obsessed guy who couldn't get enough of me. Turns out, he's a repeat offender, stalking multiple people in a messed up way. The police are now figuring out the whole crazy plan he had. I'm glad they caught him, but it's pretty shocking to think about how many people he bothered. Now, I'm involved in this bigger thing, like a strange puzzle that a guy has been working on for years. Feels good that it's finally over, but it also makes me feel uneasy. I'm just happy it's done for now. Hopefully, this unexpected turn in the story will also help other victims get the justice they deserve. Goodbye, creepy stalker guy. I met Jake in second grade. We sat at the same table and became friends instantly. We both liked building with blocks, drawing, and playing video games. After school, Jake would come to my place, and we'd spend a lot of time playing video games and then building stuff with Legos. As we grew up, Jake became like a big brother to me. I was a thin kid who often got teased by older kids, but Jake protected me with his big presence. By the time we got to middle school, he was really tall and strong, 6'4" and over 200 pounds. Nobody dared to bother him. And since they knew he was my best friend, they stayed away from me too. Despite Jake looking scary because of his size, he was actually a really nice guy. He didn't like being so big because he felt like he didn't fit in, both at school and at home. Jake's parents were not tall. His mom was only 5 feet 2 inches, and his dad was 5 feet 8 inches. His mom was always kind to me, baking cookies whenever I visited. On the other hand, his dad was a bit intimidating. He wasn't super tall, but he had broad shoulders and big arms. He didn't talk to me much, and when he did, it was in a low, rough voice that sounded like he had just woken up. When I first met Jake, I noticed he never ate meat. First time he came to my house for dinner, we had steak, but he didn't want any and asked for salad and potatoes instead. I thought it was strange because I didn't know about vegetarians and vegans back then. Later, when I visited Jake's house, I saw his freezer was full of different kinds of meat like chicken, turkey, and pork. I asked him about it while we were playing on his computer, and he said the meat was for his parents because they love it. When I asked if he was a vegetarian, he gave a vague answer like, yeah, something like that. I didn't think much about it as we got older. In high school, Jake's behavior changed a lot. He got into many fights, and the school suspended him often. Older kids would tease him, and when he fought back, they would team up against him, giving him black eyes. I asked him why he kept getting into fights, but he never gave me a clear answer, always avoiding the question. I was also getting bullied, but unlike Jake, I didn't let it bother me. I just ignored them, and over time, they stopped bothering me. One day, I went to Jake's basement, a place I'd only been to once before. It felt strange, a big room with just a few fridges full of meat and some ice. The basement was usually locked, which was weird, but I didn't think much about it. Later, a guy named Tim, who often bullied Jake, didn't show up at school anymore. At first, no one noticed, but as time passed, missing posters of Tim started appearing, and people started saying that Jake might be involved. People thought Jake might have been involved in Tim going missing, but I just couldn't believe it. Jake is my best friend, and I didn't think he would do something like that. But I started having doubts, and when I asked Jake, he promised on his mom's life that he had nothing to do with it. Police looked for Tim for a long time but couldn't find him, eventually giving up. While everyone moved on from Tim, Jake seemed happier. That's when I began to feel suspicious. I couldn't figure out why, but deep down, I sensed Jake might have something to do with Tim disappearing. I tried talking to Jake about Tim, but he got mad each time, thinking I believed school rumors. He questioned why I doubted his best friend. I stopped asking, but I still felt suspicious. One evening, Jake asked me to come to his house. I hesitated but went, hoping we could talk and fix things. In his room, things felt tense, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Suddenly, Jake got up and told me Come with me, I want to show you something. We went down to the basement, the same place I had been to only once before. But this time, it felt strange, colder, and kind of spooky. Jake opened the door, and as it squeaked open, I was surprised. The space that used to be empty now had lots of cages. And in those cages, there were animals, chickens, turkeys, pigs, all alive. It was surprising and made me feel confused. "Hey Jake, what's going on?" I asked, feeling confused and shocked by what I saw. Jake seemed guilty and desperate as he replied, "I'm not the person you think I am. I've been saving animals from farms where they're treated badly. I can't bear to see them suffer and be killed for food." I was really surprised. The person I thought was in trouble for a crime was actually running a secret rescue for animals. Jake told me how he used the meat in his freezer to feed these rescued animals. Tim went missing and I was puzzled about it. Then I figured out why Jake was keeping the basement a secret. He was scared that people wouldn't get why he was doing what he was doing, and that would make the rumors about him even worse. When Jake told me his side of the story, I saw a whole new side of him. Turns out, he wasn't up to anything bad. Instead, he was spending his time and energy on something he really cared about. The doubts I had about him disappeared, and I felt amazed and proud of my friend. We chose not to tell anyone about Jake's work because we knew not everyone would get it. Eventually, he shared with me the difficulties he had in saving and taking care of animals. He faced problems in keeping his work a secret, had to rescue animals late at night, and constantly worried about people finding out. Life threw us a surprise, and it actually brought Jake and me closer. I became Jake's go-to person, supporting him in juggling his secret mission in normal life. As time went on, our friendship got even stronger, and we both got really into helping animals. Even though we never figured out what happened to Tim, discovering Jake's hidden passion made a big impact on our lives. Sometimes the real story behind surprises is more uplifting than all the gossip. My name is Sophia, and I went on a really cool trip to Africa with my family. We stayed at a camp in the Sahara Desert for a few nights. My sister Lily and I talked a lot about hanging out with the guys who worked at the camp. Most of them were in their 20s or 30s. They were friendly and seemed pretty chill. We had a really fun night around a big fire, and one of the guys seemed to be focusing on me more than usual. It felt a bit strange, but I thought maybe it was because we speak different languages. When you're out in the desert at night, the stars are incredibly bright, especially if the moon isn't out. You can even see the Milky Way around 2 a.m. The tents were really nice, with beds, lights, a toilet, and a shower. It was different from normal camping because the tent doors had locks on them. These people came by our tents and asked if we wanted to see the stars. My sister Lily and I stayed in one tent, and our parents were in a nearby one. I was really tired on the first night, so I decided not to go stargazing. Lily went alone, and I didn't lock the door because I didn't want her to get stuck outside if I fell asleep. Suddenly, I woke up because I saw someone looking into my room. I thought it was Lily, so I asked her what she was doing. But it wasn't Lily, it was the guy from the campfire. He was peeking into my room while I was fast asleep. I got really scared. We were in the middle of nowhere in the desert, about a 30-minute truck ride into the sand dunes. I was really frightened, half asleep, and there's this guy just staring at me. I got scared and told him I was tired and didn't want to do what he was asking. He kept insisting that I join him at the dunes with a blanket. I said, "No way." At that time, I didn't know where Lily or my family was, and I felt really confused. I closed the door at last. Quickly, I went to the bathroom because I wasn't feeling well. While I was in there, he called my name from outside, but I didn't say anything. When I got back to bed, I was really scared and my heart was beating fast. He came back and called my name again, but I didn't say anything. I tried texting Dad, but he didn't respond. I was too afraid to leave the tent. When Lily and Dad returned, I told them what happened, but they didn't take it seriously. They said I was overreacting. Only Mom understood why I was so scared. The next morning during breakfast, I talked about it again. Lily and Dad thought I was making a big deal out of it. Only Mom agreed that it was strange. On the second night, Lily and I were outside with some friends, chatting under the stars. It was really dark, and we couldn't see anyone's faces. I talked to a guy, and when he asked if I remembered him, I said no because it was too dark. But when he shone a light, guess who? It was the same guy from the tent. I was shocked because he told me he wouldn't be there that night. I was prepared to say something if he acted strange, but he stayed away. When we left a few days later, he started sending me messages on Instagram. I had tagged the entire desert in my pictures, and somehow he discovered me. Isn't that weird? He told me he was happy to discover my account, and that made me uneasy. I didn't respond. After a few days, he messaged me again with a casual, "Hey, how are you?" But I chose to ignore it. That's what happened. Now, I'm wondering if I overreacted or if my instincts were right. Even though he seemed harmless, you can never be too sure, you know? When we returned home and looked at the pictures from our trip, something surprising happened. While going through the photos, I saw something strange in a picture from the night at the desert camp. In the background, there was a dark figure near the tents. It was nighttime, and the figure looked like it was watching us. I looked closer, my heart racing, trying to see the details. It was hard because it was really dark, but there was something not right. The longer I stared, the more I figured out it was the same person, the one who had looked into my tent before. But here's the weird part. He wasn't by himself. There was another person with him, kind of hidden in the dark. I wondered who the other person was and why they were there. I couldn't help feeling that something was wrong. I showed the picture to Lily and Mom, and they felt scared too. Dad didn't think it was a big deal, saying it could be anyone, but I still couldn't shake off the worried feeling. I started thinking if the person who peeked in was alone or if someone else was with him during that creepy incident. I thought about telling the authorities, but I didn't have solid evidence, so it seemed like a dead end. However, I did block the person on social media to avoid any more contact. The surprising thing in the picture kept bothering me. It was like a puzzle piece that didn't make sense. I wondered if there was more to that night in the desert that I didn't know about. Some mysteries just stay unsolved, making me feel uneasy. But it taught me to listen to my gut feeling and be really careful, even in situations that seem safe. I want to tell you about this weird experience I had with a guy named Smiley. I don't think that was his real name, but it adds to the spooky factor. This happened about 9 years ago, but I still think about it, especially on gloomy days in Ocean View. Let me take you back to 2013 when I was working at a herbal shop near the shore. I used to work at a place that sold herbs in Ocean View, really close to the beach. Around 35% of the people who came were without homes. Sometimes someone going through a hard time would try to enter. If they were too loud or didn't make sense, the security wouldn't allow them unless they had 3 things: medical papers, ID, and cash. We also did this nice thing where we gave away leftover items to one person each day. People on the boardwalk heard about it, and usually those customers were really nice, even if they were a bit smelly. One day between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I was working alone at the back of the store because someone was sick. We had security cameras, but no one was actively watching them. Then, Smiley came in and checked in at the front. He was the only customer. When he walked in, the room suddenly felt colder. Smiley was a really tall guy, about 6'5", and he was wearing a worn-out cowboy-like coat. Usually, we didn't allow customers to wear hats, hoods, or sunglasses, but the security didn't ask him to take off his hat. The strange thing was that he smelled really bad than anything I've ever smelled before, almost like death. I was alone in the back, and I could see that he wasn't wearing any shoes. His feet looked ragged, and one ankle was swollen like a melon, leaving a bloody trail behind him. I asked nicely, "Sir, can you please remove your hat?" "It's a store rule," he grumbled.
"I don't take off my hat."
I didn't want to argue. I just wanted to help him quickly. He came closer, and his smell was really strong. I saw a tattoo on his burned arm, a homemade smiley face. He told me his name was Smiley. The smell was so strong that I had to take small breaths. Smiley told me he walked all the way from Rockdale. I was surprised and said, "Wow, That's a really long walk. Anyway, what do you want to order? His eyes looked dark and scary, and he seemed like he lived in the woods, not at the beach like most people. I tried to stay a bit away from him, but he kept getting closer. Worried, I asked, "Are you okay, sir?" He got angry and said,
Why do you care?
I thought, well, I tried my best. Okay, no problem. What would you like to order? I asked, hoping to get things moving. Stared at me without saying anything, so I stepped back, thinking about what to do. I chose to give him some free stuff because he walked a long way, hoping he would go away. Surprisingly, he took the bag but kept standing and staring. I said, "Thanks, Smiley," feeling relieved. He grunted and slowly left, leaving a bad smell behind. I was grateful that I never saw Smiley again. Later, I talked to the security people to find out why they allowed him to enter. It turns out they saw his injured feet, and when one of them asked if he was okay, the person, Smiley, threatened to harm him. Since the security guards were just young and didn't want any problems, they decided to leave him alone, but kept an eye on him through the cameras. We were all scared and freaked out, but at least our boss gave us free weed for handling the scary situation. That's how we lived happily, cleaning up the mess and hoping we wouldn't see Smiley again. But life isn't always so easy, right? A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. I was working in the afternoon, and things felt tense because of what went down earlier. The security was on high alert, and I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. Suddenly, the door made a jingling sound, and a woman walked in. She was kind of average in height, looked like she was in her mid-30s, and seemed tired. She had a big bag with her, and her name tag said Joy. It was kind of funny because I just met someone named Smiley. I said, "Hello, how can I help you?" I was a bit careful in my greeting. She told me she heard about our kindness program and really needed some help. She wasn't without a home, but things were hard, and she could use some free food. I felt both relieved and sorry. Joy seemed really happy, and I started thinking that not everyone who shows up unexpectedly is going to be like Smiley. I gave her a bag of kind notes, and she thanked me with tears in her eyes. It felt nice to help someone who truly needed it. As Joy left, I saw her looking worriedly at the security guards. That uneasy feeling returned, and I wondered if there was more to her story. But, with all the busyness of running the shop, I didn't pay much attention to it. The next day, Joy came back, but this time she didn't have the heavy bag. She looked calmer and not as desperate. We talked a bit, and she told me about her difficulties. She's a single mom, trying hard to make ends meet and dealing with the tough parts of life. I felt bad for her, and we connected as people. As time passed, Joy started coming by regularly. She'd tell me little bits about her life, and it felt like we were becoming friends. Even the security guards, who were cautious at first, started to be more friendly. It seemed like our shop became a safe place for Joy, where she could take a break from her problems for a little while. But when I thought the story was getting better, something surprising happened. One evening, as I was closing the shop, Joy started acting weird. She looked around nervously and didn't seem as calm as usual. I asked if everything was okay, and after hesitating, she quietly said, "I need your help. Can we talk somewhere private?" I felt uneasy again, but I agreed and took her to the back of the shop. Joy whispered something surprising. She said that Smiley, a man who seemed really scary, was actually her long-lost brother. She hadn't seen him for a very long time, and his sudden appearance scared her a lot. Joy shared that their childhood was tough because they experienced abuse and really bad things. Smiley, who used to be a loving brother, had changed a lot and became someone dark and unfamiliar. Joy admitted that she had moved away from Rockdale to escape her painful memories, but Smiley somehow found her. She was really scared for her safety and didn't know what to do. Even the security guards, who overheard our talk, looked shocked and couldn't believe what they were hearing. We were shocked to learn something surprising about Joy. She asked us to understand her situation and didn't want to call the police. She just needed a safe place to stay while she figured out how to help her troubled brother. Our kindness towards her now felt even more important. For the next few days, we had to carefully manage running the store and making sure Joy was safe. We decided to keep her stay a secret and the security guards quietly watched out for her brother, Smiley. The door felt tense, and every time the door made a noise, it made us nervous. One day, while I was putting things on the shelves, I saw Smiley outside the store. He was looking at the entrance so intensely that it gave me chills. The security guards quietly got ready, expecting something to happen. But Smiley didn't rush in. He just stayed there for what seemed like a really long time. He kept staring at the entrance, but he didn't do anything. It was like he knew Joy was around but couldn't figure out exactly where she was hiding. Finally, he turned and walked away, fading into the shadows. We all let out a sigh of relief, but the fear still stuck with us. Joy, thankful for our help, realized she couldn't stay in Ocean View forever. Sadly, she left, promising to stay in touch and keep us updated. After everything settled down, the shop went back to being somewhat normal. The security guards, who were cautious before, now exchanged nods of friendship with me. The kindness program carried on, but the encounters with unexpected guests had a lasting effect. Life has lots of surprises, and things don't always go as we expect. Joy's stories showed me that being kind is important, even if someone seems different. Knowing about someone's past can help us see them in a new light. Smiley came back for a short time, and the fear he brought reminded us that tough times can come out of nowhere. We have to face challenges with kindness and bravery, even when things get tough. I've been keeping this story to myself for a bit because I didn't want to mess with the trust between tenants, landlords, and the maintenance crew. But seriously, I need to tell you about the wild stuff that happened when I was living at this place called Serenity Apartments. I'm changing the names so nobody gets all worked up about where it happened. When I was in high school, I really wanted to live at Serenity. They had cool things like a nice place to live and all that. What sold me on it was that they allowed pets and it fit my budget. So I quickly got the first available apartment and moved in. So it turns out my new place isn't as awesome as I thought. The building is old, the plumbing is not reliable, and the walls are thin, meaning I can hear everything. Also, the neighborhood isn't very safe. Most of the time, I'm doing my schoolwork online. But I have one class that requires me to leave the house twice a week at 8 a.m. I'm not really into going out much. I prefer staying home or spending time with my boyfriend after he finishes work. My home, which is pretty small at only 600 square feet, felt like a mysterious place. Stuff would disappear, especially my underwear. At first, I thought my 2 kittens were the culprits, but things got even stranger. The underwear box would somehow end up in the middle of my bedroom floor when I was away for class. I didn't have a real dresser, just an IKEA shelf, you know? I'd promised myself I'd put it back, but in the morning rush, I'd blame it on my sleepy brain. I started thinking that my clothes were mysteriously disappearing, especially my boyfriend's favorite ones. They would go missing from the laundry hamper and never show up again after washing. It was getting pretty weird. One night while I was doing homework, my boyfriend called to say he got locked out by his roommate. I hurried over to help him get in. Since I was on a tight budget, I left all my lights on. When I returned in less than 15 minutes, something seemed strange. All the lights were off. I talked to my boyfriend. Checked everywhere, no one was there. But guess what? All the lights were off, even my Lizard's special light that turns on by itself. My laptop was off too, but I left it on for my homework. I got really scared, called for help, spilled the beans about someone using a key to get in. The manager called back and said I might be imagining things. They thought I forgot to turn off the lights. No way, someone was in my place. I asked about changing the locks, and they said they do it when someone moves out. The manager thought it could be a friend playing a prank, but I was sure it wasn't. They finally agreed to change the locks for my peace of mind. But I was still unsure, especially about the untidy maintenance guy. When I first moved in, they promised to give me a new kitchen counter in 3 days, but it never happened. Then suddenly, the scruffy guy shows up without warning, saying he's here to replace my countertop. It took him 2 days for just a small part. A few weeks later, while getting out of the shower, I heard a knock. Before I could get dressed, the door started opening. I had to quickly slam it shut. The scruffy guy claimed he didn't hear me, but I didn't believe him. Another time, I found a note from him, saying he had been in my place but not explaining why. He also mentioned a third cat, which I didn't have. I went to my office and wanted a heads up before people came in. I really liked being there. After that, surprise visits for maintenance stopped, but things were still being moved around. I even put my own lock on the door, but I wasn't completely sure about it. With help from my parents, I bought a condo, subleased my apartment, and got a job at a different place. In my last days at the old place, my mom caught a scruffy guy trying to use his key when I wasn't home. He said he was there to paint the front door, but there was no notice, no paint, and no supplies. My mom told him to wait until I moved out and shut him down. Years later, I started working at a different place called OK Apartments. One day, I went shopping, which means I pretended to be interested in another apartment complex to get information. There was a guy who seemed too rich for our apartments, and he asked me about Paradise Apartments. I ended up sharing with him what happened at Serenity Apartments, where I used to live. I told him how someone broke in, and I thought it was the maintenance guy. Surprisingly, the guy I was talking to turned out to be owner of Paradise Apartments. He was really surprised by my story and asked me to describe the scruffy guy. Then he called the manager of Serenity Apartments. It turned out that the scruffy guy had been fired for breaking into the apartments of single women. The owner assured me that everything was sorted out now and asked if I would change my review. I decided not to change my review because the past is the past, but I was happy that the owner confirmed my suspicions about the maintenance guy. Working in leasing showed me that some apartment complexes take shortcuts. They don't always change locks unless the tenant caused problems, skip background checks for staff, and handle keys carelessly. Maya's Law in Florida made some improvements, but renters still need to be cautious. If you feel someone is acting suspicious, document it and let someone know. It's important because you never know who might have a key to your place. That's the story of my crazy experience at Serenity Apartments. Before I continue to the next story, if you are interested in earning from YouTube without showing your face, or without making videos by yourself using artificial intelligence, like the video that you are watching right now, then I have a special free training for you. Check the first link in the description below to get instant access. I'm from Greenfield, and I dated a guy from Oaksville who lived far away. I used to travel a lot by road to see him. I really enjoy road trips. They're my favorite. I've driven all over our state by myself. It feels great to cruise along the roads alone. Sometimes I'd sleep in my car to save money. It's kind of like camping in a metal tent. It makes you feel like you're getting a taste of roughing it outdoors. I usually lean my seat back, leave the car key in the ignition just in case, and take a nap. I don't cover the windows for privacy, but maybe I should. It takes about 2 days to drive to his house. I usually stop somewhere near the border of Franklin and Hartley. So, on my last trip, that's exactly where I stopped for the night. Rest stops are often calmer than places where trucks stop. That night, this one was really quiet. There were only a few cars parked by themselves under the not-so-bright streetlights. They were probably other people traveling like me. I picked a spot away from the bright light and parked my car under a tree so I could have more privacy. Then I did what I usually do. I locked the doors, opened the window a bit for fresh air, and got ready to sleep. I never had any problems while sleeping in my car during camping trips, so when I suddenly heard a loud tap that woke me up, I didn't worry too much. At first, I thought it might have been a sound from my dream. Since I was lying back, all I could see was the ceiling. Then I heard another tap, similar to something hitting the windshield. I thought it could be rain or a branch falling from the tree above, or maybe a small animal, like a squirrel playing around. I started thinking, what if it wasn't an animal but a person outside? I checked if the doors were locked and if the keys were in the car. Everything was secure. I chose to stay quiet, pretending to be asleep, hoping the person would go away. I was too frightened to know, too scared to even sneak a look. The tapping kept going, and I couldn't stay still. I was really scared and felt like I had to see what it was. I lifted my head slowly and got really scared when I saw a face on my car's window. It was a woman's face, and she was looking right at me with a strange smile. I was really scared. Her eyes were all white, rolled back. Her nose was squished against the glass, and her mouth was wide open, showing bad, rotting teeth. In the dim light, I could see her very pale, sickly skin and her long, dirty black hair. She didn't seem okay at all. I was so scared that I couldn't move at first. But then I got brave and quickly started the car. I backed up really fast because I was afraid that she might grab onto the front of the car like in a scary movie. I was so nervous that I even turned on the windshield wipers by mistake while trying to get her off. When I stopped backing up, she fell down on her hands and knees. I quickly changed gears and drove away fast from the parking area. I glanced back and saw her trying to grab the driver's side door. She screamed really loudly, giving me a scare. I thought I saw her chasing after me, crawling on all fours with her messy black hair waving in the air. I didn't glance back until I got onto the highway. I drove all through the night without stopping until I saw the sun come up. While I kept driving, feeling shocked and unable to believe what had just occurred, I couldn't get rid of the creepy feeling. For a long time, the hours went by and the sun went up higher. I stopped at a diner to get some coffee and relax. While I was sitting and drinking my coffee, I saw a newspaper on a table close by. The big title on the front page got my attention. Strange thing happened at rest stop scares drivers. The story talked about some weird things happening to travelers at rest stops in the state. People said they saw a confused lady acting strangely, scaring others by coming up to their cars. The police were looking into it, but they hadn't figured out what was going on yet. As I kept reading, I found a drawing of the woman. It looked just like the one I saw in my car window. It made my heart beat faster. But there was more in the article. It said she might have been in an accident. People thought she was confused and upset because she might have been hurt in a hit and run. Her head injury could be why she acted strangely. All of a sudden, I stopped being scared and started worrying instead. Scary thing I experienced wasn't with a ghost or someone mean, but maybe someone who was lost or hurt and needed help. I felt bad for leaving so fast and feeling scared. I knew I should have tried to help her or asked someone else to help her. I hurried to tell the police everything about what happened, hoping it could help them figure things out and help the lady. Surprise in the story wasn't spooky or magical. It was a reminder that real life can be tricky. It's important to be kind and understanding even when things are scary or confusing. I think it's really interesting when my girlfriend talks in her sleep. At first, she'd say strange things like the sky folding or raising the ground. We'd laugh about it later, but she never remembered saying those things. I wish I knew what those weird phrases meant. Every night, we'd cuddle in bed, but when it got too hot, we'd move apart. She'd fall asleep before me, and that's when I'd hear her talking in her sleep. At first, it was funny to tell our friends about the funny things she said while sleeping, but now it worries me, especially after something strange happened last night. At around 11 at night, I was really into a book while she was sleeping next to me. I heard her say something quietly, but when I looked, she was fast asleep. So I went back to reading until I fell asleep too. But then, out of nowhere, I woke up because she was talking loudly. We were looking at each other, which was weird because we usually slept facing opposite directions. Her eyes were open wide, but it felt like she wasn't really there, like she was staring past me or something. The eyes that used to make me happy were suddenly making me feel uneasy. I got scared and quickly got out of bed. She kept looking at me without blinking. I thought maybe the small light from the book was bothering her, so I turned it off. But things still didn't feel right. I asked if she was okay, but she didn't answer. She kept staring at me and said, "Come back to bed, dear." She didn't call me dearie like she usually does. I tried talking to her, asking if she was awake, but she looked around the room without focusing and her eyes went all white in the dim light. She started talking in a strange, deep voice, and her hands moved oddly, like she couldn't control them well. I felt a little scared, so I acted like I wanted a drink to leave quickly. But when I said it, she told me not to go, sounding a bit spooky. I didn't want to make her upset, so I tried to distract her by putting water on her face. Luckily, it helped. She calmed down and went back to sleep. I chose to stay on the couch for the rest of the night. The next morning, she woke up like she always does, but she didn't remember anything from the night before. I felt unsure whether to talk about it because I didn't know if it was just a strange dream or if something was really not right. Days went by. Everything seemed normal, but I couldn't shake off this strange feeling inside me. I got home early one evening from hanging out with friends. When I walked in, I heard quiet voices coming from our bedroom. It made me really scared. I went closer slowly, thinking maybe my partner was talking while asleep like they sometimes do. But this time the words were easy to hear, and they weren't coming from my partner. I thought I heard someone, but it wasn't her talking. When I opened the door, she was sitting there with her eyes closed, saying strange things in a different voice. I tried to wake her up nicely, but she didn't snap out of it. It's like she's stuck in this weird state, saying things that don't make any sense. I was really scared and had no idea what to do, so I talked to her best friend for advice. She said we should ask a sleep expert because she thought there might be a sleep problem. The expert couldn't give us quick answers, but they told us to write down everything about her sleep and what she does before bedtime. As I started doing this job, I saw something strange happening. It wasn't just talking in sleep for no reason. It looked like it was following a certain order. The words she said seemed to connect and make a secret message. One night, when she was in this different state, everything seemed to fit together, and the message made sense. Look for the secret box under the floor. I felt really interested and a little nervous. I wondered what I might find. Carefully, I lifted up the floorboard in our bedroom. I was really surprised to see a secret box underneath. When I opened it, I discovered old letters, a blurry photo, and a tiny notebook. The letters were from a person I didn't know, but they were pouring their feelings out, sharing secrets and dreams. The picture had a happy young couple, but the notebook was special. It had a sad love story that connected to our house. The person in the letters and photos used to live here and had a link to our bedroom. It felt like the spirit of someone who couldn't find peace was using my girlfriend to talk to us. The things she said weren't random. They were like pieces of a story that wanted to be told. I learned something new and then asked a history expert about our area's past. We worked together and found a forgotten story about love and sadness. We hope to help a ghost find peace in our house. I'm 15 and just started my job as a new police officer. I went through a breakup recently, and my friend told me about this app called Spark to meet new people. So I found this girl named Lily on Spark, and she's really good looking. We decided to meet up in an open field to stargaze and hang out. When the night came, I picked her up, and she showed me the way to a field with woods, deer, and other animals. It was a pretty cool experience. But then, a surprising thing happened. While we were having a good time under the starry sky, I saw faint headlights far away. A van was coming toward us and stopped very close, almost blocking my car. I told Lily to stay where she was, took my flashlight, and went to see what was happening. There was a fairly big guy in the van, and I asked him what was happening. Surprisingly, he was nice. He said he owned the land and was having problems with people hunting illegally. He just wanted to make sure we weren't there to hunt. I told him we weren't, and he left. After a while, headlights came toward us quickly. We got in our car and positioned it defensively. It was the same guy, and he almost hit my car. Lily got out and ran to him. I felt like I was in trouble. I told them to back up and get on the ground, but they didn't listen. The guy came at me, and we ended up on the ground. Fortunately, I was able to get back up. Lily took a metal pipe from the van. She claimed they had a gun and wanted my money and truck. But I was really determined and said no. Lily started crying, saying they didn't want to harm me. The guy went back to the car, so I decided to reveal something big. I told them I was a cop. I took out my hidden gun and lay on the ground. They were shocked for a moment. Then they listened to me. Just when I was about to call 911, they ran away again. Without thinking much, I chased them. I followed the guy into the woods. But after hearing 3 loud noises and seeing a flash, My feeling of being invincible disappeared. I quickly ran back to my car and drove away. I went back to where I had picked up Lily, called for help again, and police officers arrived at the location. My sergeant and field training officer were the first to arrive. Instead of scolding me too much, they just called me a dumbass and a stupid rookie. We all headed towards the field. Luckily, the van was still there. They told me to stay quiet and only come out if things got dangerous. The officers checked the area and searched the van. On the center console, they found a drug. What scared me the most was when they returned looking pale and horrified. They told me to go to the back of the van. In there, I saw knives, duct tape, lighter fluid, bullets for a rifle, handcuffs, and what looked like dry blood on the front passenger seat. My heart started pounding. We also found a type of rifle and 2 more handguns. We quickly called for help and detectives. But the surprises didn't stop there. The detectives checked everything and found out the blood wasn't real. The van was actually stolen. But the biggest shock came when they discovered a secret compartment under the van's floor. Inside, they found detailed plans for a bunch of crimes, like kidnapping and robbery. It turns out the guy and Lily were actually doing some really bad stuff together. They were part of a group doing illegal things, and they used the open field as a hiding spot for their secret activities. Lily wasn't just innocent, she was willingly helping them. The online dating thing they did was just a trick to catch people off guard. The detectives found out that the stolen plates and van they used were connected to a bunch of crimes that hadn't been solved yet in the area. This wasn't just a random meeting. They had planned everything carefully. Lily used her looks and charm to make people trust her before they got taken advantage of. I couldn't believe what happened. I thought I was the one in danger, but it turned out that Lily and the guy were the real threat. The first meeting in the field was just a test to see if I was an easy target. Everything that happened after that was part of their plan to distract and get away. Finding out about this shocked me. The 2 criminals had tricked me, and my belief that I was invincible almost got me into big trouble. It made me realize that danger can come from unexpected places, and even though I'm a cop, I'm not immune to it. It was like a wake-up call for me. As the investigation went on, it became clear that Lily and the guy weren't just doing small crimes. They were part of a bigger group that did serious illegal stuff like selling drugs and being involved in organized crime. They used the open field as a temporary hiding spot to plan their bad actions without anyone noticing. This case was a big deal for the police. It helped them break down the whole criminal group. Lily and the guy got caught, and they were linked to other crimes that hadn't been solved before. This unexpected turn of events made a regular night a huge deal for me as a new cop. Looking back at what happened, I learned important things about how life can be surprising and why it's crucial to be careful, even in situations that seem safe. When I had that experience with Lily and the criminal, it taught me to listen to my gut feelings and be alert to possible dangers that might not be obvious. That unexpected event didn't just change what happened that night. It also influenced how I do my job as a police officer. It showed me that real danger isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's hidden and only shows itself when it's too late. Learning this as a young cop was really important for me. I am a girl, and I grew up in a small town with parents who were both caring and pretty strict. Life there was steady and followed a routine. When I was about to go to college, I started liking a guy named Max. He was older and went to the same college I was going to. His apartment became my hideout from my parents' supervision just before I left for college. My parents were really nice. They liked when I had my own ideas and freedom, but they still had rules. They were great examples for me, and I listened to their advice. My mom taught me to be careful in relationships. I told Max that I was okay being friends but didn't want a serious relationship yet. One summer, I had some extra days off, so I wanted to hang out with my friend Max. We planned to have a great time playing with Nerf guns, reading Stephen King books, and just having fun together. But when I got to Max's place, something didn't seem right. I saw a box of condoms out in the open, and I wasn't comfortable with that. I told Max, and at first he seemed fine with it. But then, He started acting differently. He suddenly seemed distant and unfriendly, not like his usual self. His place felt really empty, and I realized there was no one else there. I felt stuck because the only ways out were past him. Things got more tense as he started saying creepy stuff that made me uncomfortable. It was like he was saying lines from a scary movie, but it wasn't funny at all. I looked calm on the outside, but inside, I was really scared. Then I had an idea. I made up a story about my dad needing me at home right away. It wasn't true, but I made it sound believable. Surprisingly, Max believed me, and I got away. I tried not to let on how scared I actually was. I got in my car like I usually do, parking far from his house. I drove to the closest Walmart to calm down after a really scary time. The drive home, which took 4 hours, felt like I was moving without really seeing anything. I felt both relieved and scared, not sure what had just happened. For a while, I stayed away from Max, feeling really guilty about what happened and blaming myself for being too trusting. It took me 4 years to finally tell my mom about it, and it felt like a weight off my shoulders. I was starting to feel better about it. Then one day, I ran into an old friend from high school. Her name is Sarah, who lived near Max. We talked, and she told me Max had left suddenly after what happened. I asked her why, and her face changed in a way that surprised me. Sarah was unsure at first, but then she told something surprising. Max was having really serious mental health problems that got really bad. He was diagnosed with something that made him act unlike himself sometimes. That's why he suddenly moved. His family stepped in to make sure he got the help he really needed. I was shocked when I found out something new. Then, what happened that important day seemed different. I thought it was really scary. But now I think it might have been because Max was having a tough time with his feelings. It made me feel serious, and I had a mix of feeling better and understanding for him. I learned that things aren't always what they seem. Life can surprise us, and those surprises can change how we see things. When I told my mom my story, it helped me feel better. But finding out the truth about Max made me feel like I could finally move on and understand things better. It taught me to be kind and understanding, especially when things happen that we don't expect. When I was 19, I moved from Oregon to Florida to be with my boyfriend at the time. I thought Florida would have beautiful beaches and be like Disney, but it was different. Instead of sandy beaches, there were lots of bugs and not so nice roads. We ended up in a small town named Meadowville, close to Gainesville, a town with just one traffic light and only 4 stores: the Dollar Den, Joe's Mart, Lily's Pharmacy, and Pete's Barbecue Place. It was nothing like what I had pictured in my head. I got a job at a really old store in the middle of town. It was close to Joe's Mart, so some people would come over from there. After working there for about 3 months, I went in for my shift one day and was taken straight to the manager's office. On his desk, there were lots of open letters, maybe 30 or 40 of them, all written by hand and really strange. The manager asked if I knew who sent them, but I had no idea. He wanted me to read one, so I chose a bright, happy yellow envelope. Inside, there were 2 handwritten letters and a picture from a magazine of a woman who looked a lot like me with long blonde hair. When I read the letters quickly, I felt really nervous. They were from someone who was imagining hanging out with me, but it got weird. They talked a lot about my hair washing it, smelling it, and said strange things about moonlight. Some parts of the letters were marked with lines, and a few words were made more noticeable. I got really worried that I might lose my job because of a scary situation. But then my boss asked if I knew someone named Chris Adams. I did. He was a tall, skinny guy with big glasses and crazy blonde hair. He used to come by a few times each week to get his Diet Coke and his mom's medicine. He acted a bit different from others. Maybe not great at talking to people or thinking like most, but I didn't pay too much attention to it. He'd talk a little or stay longer at my counter, but I didn't think it was a big deal. One day, something strange happened at work. 2 weeks before that, a man came up behind me and touched my hair, which made me feel really uncomfortable. I moved away, and he said, "Sorry," quietly. I told my boss about it, and they promised to stop him from coming back. But after I got home, things got even weirder. A few hours later, I heard a loud knock on my door. When I looked, it seemed like a big group of police officers had come. I was really scared and confused about what was happening. They were all dressed in special clothes and had guns. When I opened the door, a lady police officer showed me some papers and asked if they could talk inside about them. I was really embarrassed. I thought everyone in town had seen those letters. I sat down, and then the lady started talking. I noticed my boyfriend giving me angry looks from the bedroom. The policewoman mentioned the letters from the store and said they had to speak to Chris because everyone in her team knew about him. They went to his house, and he got really upset when they wanted to stop him from doing something. He kept saying it was a mistake and that I wanted to talk to him. But here's the surprising part: when he was 12, he did something really wrong to his mom. He was in a special place for kids who have problems, and he recently got out. The police found concerning things at his house, and they thought he was following me. I was really surprised. The day after, the police arrested him for following me around. They found him hanging out in the parking lot of the store. Later, they took him away. I didn't get to read all the letters he sent me or know what they found at his home. Felt like a big puzzle with missing pieces. Then, something unexpected happened. A few days later, while I was getting ready to move back to Oregon, I got a call. It was Chris's lawyer. She said Chris needed to talk to me urgently. I was nervous, wondering what could be happening now. I talked to Chris's lawyer, and she gave me a note from Chris himself. He said he didn't mean to scare me and apologized for everything. But the surprising part was a letter from Chris's doctor. It explained that Chris had a condition that made him believe he was in a different world where I was really important to him. It was really shocking. Chris wasn't trying to be scary at all. He genuinely believed we were in a different reality. The doctor's letter said Chris had been struggling for a long time. Sometimes he would focus on people, thinking they were part of his world. It felt unreal. The doctor said Chris didn't want to hurt anyone, and they were changing how they helped him. I felt relieved I was safe, but sad for Chris, dealing with a tough situation. Later, I went back to Oregon, seeing things differently. Life surprises us, and things may not be as they look. I learned to dig deeper, and that knowing someone's story can make a big difference. A long time ago, when I was a little kid, maybe 4 or 5 years old, it was Easter Sunday. My family always got together at my grandma's house for holidays. So that day, my mom and I were going there, like we usually did. My mom preferred living far from the noisy city, so we had to drive for about an hour to get there. But when we were about 20 minutes away, our car showed that we needed gas. That's when we stopped at this old-fashioned gas station. The gas station looked red and white, covered in Easter stickers on the windows. Not many people were there, just a few customers. Mom told me to stay in the car while she went inside to pay for gas. It was a sunny day, so I had the windows open and was playing with the fun things in my Easter basket. I saw a tall, grown-up man, probably about 30 years old, coming towards me. He said hello and asked what my name was. But I remembered my mom telling me to be careful with people I didn't know, so I didn't talk much. He said his name was Charlie, and thought that because we knew each other's names, we weren't strangers anymore. I kind of started to believe him. We talked for a little while, but I don't remember much, except that he liked my basket. Then I started feeling strange in my stomach, but I didn't know why. Right then, my mom came out of the gas station and saw the man near our car. She quickly walked over and asked him what he was doing. He got nervous and tried to open my door, but it was locked. Then he reached in and grabbed my wrist, trying to pull me out. I got really scared and pulled away strongly. That made him release my wrist and run away quickly. Mom reached the car and opened the doors. She gave me a big hug and made sure I was all right. I had a small bruise and my arm was red where a man had grabbed me. But besides feeling scared, I was okay. Suddenly I realized what had happened and started crying while holding on to my mom. After I said I was fine, I don't remember much. Later, I asked my mom about it, and she told me she called the police immediately. She still says it was the scariest moment for her. Now, about that surprise. Well, as if the whole situation wasn't surprising enough, there was something else that made the story even stranger. The person working at the gas station who was inside during everything came out looking really worried after the man ran away. They quickly came to us, saying sorry a lot. It turns out they knew the man who scared us. They used to be friends, but had a fight a while ago. The gas station worker mentioned the man had been acting strangely lately, showing up there looking nervous and acting weird. They felt awful that this happened at their workplace and promised to help the police catch the guy in any way they could. A surprising turn made the situation scarier. I wondered why the man did something so scary and what caused him to act that way. It was shocking to find out that the gas station worker knew the man but didn't expect him to do something like that. Looking back, it was a scary experience. It happened so fast and was so scary that it took me a while to feel better. But I'm thankful Mom was there. And in the end, everything was okay. The twist of the gas station guy knowing the stranger made it even more confusing and scarier to remember. I remember when I had to guard a spooky cemetery at night for about 2 weeks. I didn't really want to do it, but I didn't have a choice. My bosses moved me there because I had some problems with a kid whose parents had a lot of money. I can't talk about that, though. I didn't enjoy being in the cemetery, because it's pretty scary, you know? That cemetery was super old, like the oldest one in the city. It became famous because it had a lot of history. But some bad stuff started happening, like people stealing things from the graves. It didn't happen a lot, but it made everyone worried it might happen again. I was the very first guard there, so I didn't know what to expect. On my first night, it was really dark and spooky. I tried walking around a bunch to feel more comfortable, but it didn't really help. I stumbled upon one of the graves that had been robbed. It belonged to a lady who lived a long time ago. I felt bad about it and said sorry to her before moving on. For the first few nights, nothing really exciting happened. It was boring because I'm used to finishing work really late. But here I had to stay from early evening until morning, 3 times a week. It made me very tired, and the coffee they had didn't help at all. By the second week, I was completely over it. I didn't think my bosses would care. I took a little nap when nothing was happening. I didn't think the robbers would return if they knew I was around. Besides, I didn't mind getting some extra sleep, especially after the way the company had treated me poorly. One night, I fell into a really deep sleep. In my dream, I had a scary experience where an old lady attacked me with a shovel, and it felt incredibly real. When I woke up, I saw her standing outside where I was staying, and it really scared me. I got really frightened, tried to run, but she disappeared suddenly. Even though I was scared, I knew I had to go outside and check what was happening. It was really cold outside, so I turned on my flashlight to see better. I noticed someone far away, but they didn't respond when I called out to them. Then I heard a noise behind me, but it turned out to be just a possum running away. When I looked back, the old lady was nowhere to be seen. I walked toward the place where I saw her, and the forest got really noisy. Birds flew away, owls hooted, even coyotes made strange sounds. It felt like nature was warning me, but I still felt like I had to keep going. I reached the end of the cemetery and called out, but nobody was there. Then, all the noise suddenly stopped, which was really creepy. That's when I realized I was standing on the grave that had been robbed, the same one I saw in my dream about the old lady. Someone grabbed my throat, and I got hit hard. It was terrifying, but it stopped suddenly, and I couldn't see anyone around. I jumped up, really worried, and searched everywhere, but didn't see anyone. I thought someone was playing a trick on me, but I couldn't understand how they disappeared so fast. When I calmed down a bit, I heard a quiet sound behind me. I turned and noticed a ripped piece of cloth sticking out from under a bush near the graves. I was curious, so I slowly went closer. I found a backpack, partly buried under the bush. It seemed like a backpack I knew. I wasn't sure at first, But then I remembered seeing that backpack on a worker here before. It was weird to find it here late at night, half buried. I dug it out and found some strange things inside: little shovels, ropes, and gloves. Not the usual stuff for someone working in a graveyard. I started to worry. What if this wasn't just a weird dream? What if someone was using this place to plan something bad? I felt really scared when I had a scary idea. I didn't want to think it was true, but I had proof. Maybe the robberies weren't random. Maybe someone wanted to make it look like I did it. Or maybe someone from the cemetery was part of it. I was holding a flashlight, and it slipped from my hands as I saw something shiny on the ground. I went closer and saw an old locket. It looked old and dirty, but there were words on it that said, "For my dearest Anna, forever in our hearts." I got really scared when I heard footsteps coming closer. Earlier, I saw a name on a grave that was the same as someone I just heard about. I couldn't figure out if they were connected. Lots of questions filled my head, but before I could think more, I heard someone coming. I got really worried, so I quickly put a locket and backpack in my pocket and rushed back to the security booth. The footsteps got closer, and soon I saw a woman coming out of the dark. She wasn't old but looked middle-aged, wearing an old coat and holding a flashlight. "Hello, who's that?" I shouted, trying to be brave. The lady stopped and put her hands up to show she wasn't a threat.
I work here. I thought I heard something. What are you doing here?
She seemed honest, but I was cautious. "I'm the security guard. I found something suspicious." She came closer slowly. I hesitated before giving her the tools and the locket. Her eyes got big with surprise.
That locket. It was my Grandma Anna's. She was buried around here. I thought I lost it a long time ago.
I felt my heart beating fast. It looked like she had a link to the grave and the tools. Was she mixed up in something bad? Or was she being honest? Right when I was about to speak, Sarah's radio suddenly made noise. Someone called her name and said they needed her at the maintenance shed. Sarah looked at me and said,
I have to go. But please, can I have the locket? It means a lot to me.
I wasn't sure, but she seemed really sincere. So even though I was hesitant, I gave it to her. Then she rushed away into the dark. As I stood there, trying to understand what just happened, I realized there was more going on here than I knew. It made me feel worried and confused. That night was just the start of something really complicated that I hadn't expected at all. I couldn't wait for this moment for a long time. When I finished high school in 2020, I knew I wanted my own place. I worked really hard for 2 years, saving every bit of money from my job. I had $10,000 in the bank, no money owed to anyone, and I owned my car completely. I felt really happy about how things were going. I had a plan. I wanted to find a cozy one-bedroom place in the downtown area, very close to where I went to high school. It seemed perfect because 5 of my friends already lived there. I thought it would be great to live so close to everything: the store, parks, and more. I filled out a form on the internet, and they said yes. It felt amazing, like winning a big prize. I was excited to have my own place to relax, but things changed fast. My friends Aaron and Rob lived in the same building a few floors above me. We spent time together at first, but then they started coming over to my place a lot. It was nice at first to see them, but it started to feel like too much. I'm usually someone who likes my own space and quiet time, but then something unexpected happened. My friend had to leave their home suddenly and asked to stay with me for a bit. I agreed to 2 weeks, but those 2 weeks became a month, then 2 months. I started feeling trapped. It turned out they weren't the kind of friend I thought they were. My home became a constant party place, noisy, full of people, and even got the attention of the police. It was a big mess. One night, I asked some people to leave my place nicely, but things got messy. I had to almost say I'd call the police to make them go. I thought it was over when I went to bed, but the next morning, Aaron and Rob were back on my couch. I was really mad because they wouldn't leave. I called 911, but they left before the police came. They still had the spare key I'd given them before. That was a big mistake on my part. I realized I needed a better way to stop them from getting in. I put something in the way of the door, hoping it would finally stop all the chaos. But that night, when I thought everything was finished, something surprising happened. Someone knocked loudly on the door. I got really scared and stopped moving. My heart was racing. But it wasn't Aaron or Rob. It was a police officer. He asked if I was the person who called about the problem earlier. I said yes, and he told me they had caught and arrested the people causing trouble. I felt better for a moment, but it didn't stay that way. The police officer's face changed, and he asked if I was close with the guys. It turns out they weren't just causing problems. They had dangerous things with them. The officer said they had drugs, guns that were against the law, and drugs used to hurt people. I felt sick. He told me they were believed to be part of some shady things, and they weren't going to leave where I was anytime soon. He told me to be careful and get legal protection. I was really scared. I didn't know how I got into this situation. After that night, I felt super worried and kept checking around me all the time. I listened to the police officer's suggestion, got legal help, and changed my locks. I didn't want anything to do with those people. Time passed, and I thought everything was done. But just when I started feeling secure, something weird occurred. One night, I was watching TV when I heard a quiet sound near the door. I got really scared and moved slowly towards the tiny hole in the door to look outside. It wasn't my friends Aaron or Rob. It was someone I didn't know. They were trying to open the door without a key. I felt really scared. I didn't recognize this person, and I didn't know why they were trying to get in. I quickly called 911 and told them what was happening. While I was on the phone, I heard a loud bang on the door. I got really worried. Were they trying to break in? In just a few minutes, I heard loud sirens getting closer. The person outside must have heard them too because they ran away fast. I peeked outside carefully and saw the police car's lights flashing. The police came right on time, but I still felt really scared. I wondered who that person was and why they were trying to get into my place. After that scary event, I had to leave. I was really scared that someone might try to break in again. So I moved far away from that area. I'm not sure what Aaron and Rob were mixed up in, but I'm glad I got away from whatever trouble they were in. It teaches me to listen to my gut feelings and be careful about who I become friends with. I was taking my usual walk at night in my neighborhood, looking around like I usually do. There's this big park I like going to sometimes, and I always find new paths to walk on. One evening, I found a path I hadn't seen before. It was about 7 in the evening, and I didn't plan on going too far. The park had a rule about when people should leave, and being in the woods alone late at night didn't sound like a good time. But this new path seemed interesting, so I wanted to see where it led. I wandered away from the usual path in the park and ended up in an area I didn't recognize. I walked for a while and then thought it was time to go back home because it was getting dark, and I didn't want to lose my way. Right when I was going to head back, I saw a cabin far away. It surprised me because I didn't know there was a cabin in this park. It seemed empty and old, like nobody had been there for a long time. Even though it was getting dark, I felt curious and attracted to it. As I got closer to the cabin, the night seemed to get even darker. Part of me wanted to leave, but I was too curious. This park wasn't for camping, just a normal park. I'd been coming here since I was little, and finding this cabin was a big surprise. I walked around the cabin carefully, just to make sure nobody was there. Then, out of nowhere, there was a loud banging noise from behind the cabin. I got scared and quickly went to see what it was. That's when I saw a girl around my age in the basement. She was hitting the window hard and shouting for help. My heart was beating fast. I felt something was really wrong. I went closer to the window quickly, but the girl told me to be quiet without saying anything. I tried to open the window, but it wouldn't budge, and my phone couldn't get any signal. So I typed messages asking if she needed help. She nodded, showing she was in trouble. I asked if anyone else was there, but she didn't know. I promised I'd help her get out, and I tried really hard to open every door and window, but they were all locked. I started to panic, but then I saw a big stone. I threw it at a window and it broke. But the hole was too small for her to escape through. I had to do something dangerous. I broke a window, went inside, got a knife from the kitchen, and searched the house. In the basement, I found a girl locked in a small cage. She looked hurt, hungry, and really scared. I used a big hammer to break the lock, and we ran to my car. But when we were leaving, we heard another car coming. The girl, Emily, got really scared, thinking it might be the person who took her. We ran away, trying not to be seen. At the hospital, Emily talked to the police about everything that happened, and I stayed with her until she felt okay. But with all the confusion, I didn't get to tell the police everything I knew. I don't know where Emily is now, but I really hope she's feeling better. But later on, some surprising stuff happened. The police found clues that the cabin where things happened wasn't empty like we thought. They found secret tunnels linked to the cabin. The police found something really bad. There was a secret group doing bad stuff in the area. They were taking people and keeping them there against their wishes. The cabin they found was just a cover for a bigger, secret plan. It wasn't just Emily who got hurt. There were more people in trouble, and this group had been taking advantage of them for a while. The man who took Emily was just one of a bunch of people involved in this scary plan. The investigation found many people involved in bad things. They were doing these things secretly for a long time without others knowing. Even in a place that seemed safe, like a park, these bad things were happening. When Emily was saved, it showed that there was a bigger problem going on. The police looked into it more and stopped the people doing these bad things. It was surprising to find out, and although Emily had a hard time getting better after what happened to her, she felt like she had a reason to help others. For me, being a part of that rescue made me realize that dangers can be hiding anywhere, even in places we know well. It was scary, and I learned to always be careful, even in spots that seemed totally safe. I was with my friend Jack, and we went to visit my family in Idaho. We had a lot of fun with my parents for a few days. Then we decided to go to a neat Airbnb a few hours away from my mom's house. We wanted to have some fun before going back to our boring jobs. We had a whole weekend free and found a nice place to stay for only $75 a night. The house wasn't huge, but it was good enough. It didn't have 2 floors, but the basement was awesome. It had a cool setup with a bar, pool table, foosball, and everything we needed for a good time. We didn't spend much time relaxing there, but it was cool. During the weekend, we explored some nearby paths, swam in the pool in the backyard, and even went fishing at a lake close by. But last night, things got a bit crazy. Jack was knocked out, and I couldn't sleep at all. I felt really nervous, so I sneaked out to quickly go to the bathroom and smoke a joint outside. While I was outside, I saw something far away that looked like a person, too big to be an animal. It was dark, so I couldn't tell if they saw me or what they were doing. Then they kind of disappeared, maybe blocked from view by the house across the street. I thought, forget it. Maybe I'll go for a walk and smoke another joint. Then I'll feel tired enough to sleep. So, I took another joint and a snack and went to the beach. It was a really nice night, quiet and calm. I found a bench and enjoyed the view of the moon and the relaxing feeling from the joint. But when I stood up to go back, I realized I lost track of time in my phone. I hoped my friend Jack wasn't worried because I disappeared. When I returned, around 11 p.m., I noticed our Airbnb door was wide open. I got really scared because I thought something bad happened. I left the door wide open and was worried about Jack being alone. When I checked on him in our room, he was totally fine, just relaxing in bed. I felt better but was confused about the open door. I usually don't make mistakes like that because I pay attention to what's going on. I decided to look around the whole house. When I went down to the basement quietly, I started feeling really scared. It was super quiet down there, which made me feel uneasy. I made myself go and check, and suddenly I heard a phone make a noise like a text message. It scared me a lot. I didn't see anyone around, but I noticed an open window and a phone on the floor with lots of messages. The last messages said someone should leave because the guy talking, had come home. Whoever it was had escaped through the window. Maybe I made a mistake and forgot to lock up, or they knew how to open the lock. Anyway, that's what happened, and I was just glad nothing worse happened. I woke up my friend Jack, told him everything, and we quickly packed and left that night. We didn't want to take any chances in case the person came back, especially while we were sleeping. But here's the surprising part. When we were driving to my mom's place, we noticed a car following us. It was strange, like it had been following us for some time. Jack and I got really scared because there was a car following us, and we had no idea who they were or what they wanted. We took turns checking, and the car stayed behind us, not getting too close, but definitely following. We didn't know the car, and it made us really uncomfortable. We tried to lose it by taking different turns, but it stayed with us, no matter what. I thought it might be someone from where we were staying, but that didn't make sense because we were far away from there. We decided to stop at a gas station to try and talk to whoever was following us. But when we pulled in, the car just kept going, like it didn't even notice us. We were confused and wondered what had just happened. When we went inside to get some snacks, I saw someone I recognized. It was the same person I had seen at the beach the other night, the one who was far away. They were just standing by the magazines acting like nothing happened, even though they had followed us for a while. I quietly told Jack, "That's the person from the other night." We didn't know what to do. Should we talk to them or pretend nothing happened? But when we left the place and got back on the road, their car was gone. It was as if they disappeared suddenly. We went back to my mom's house in the car, watching carefully, but nothing strange happened again. We stayed very alert for the whole weekend. When it was time to go back home, we checked everything twice to be safe. We never found out who followed us or why. It was the wildest, most surprising thing that happened during our trip. But it taught us to be more careful when walking on the beach at night and to always lock our doors.